watered by numerous canals, providing fertile soil that can be cultivated all year round. If there was one historical event that had far-reaching impact on Siam and Tawi-Watana, it was the Bowring Treaty of 1855. In the reign of King Rama IV, the British were demanding that Siam open up her markets for British trade. Trade in Siam then was a royal monopoly. Sir John Bowring came to Bangkok in 1855 to renew these demands with the threat of force if they were not met. As a result, a treaty, if you can call it that, was signed on the 18th April 1955, which gave the British the right to trade in all Siamese ports, reside and own land in Siam, move freely about Siam, a single duty for 3% for all imports and 5% for all exports. It also gave extraterritorial rights to British subjects, which means exempting them from Siamese laws. This treaty later became known as the Bowring Treaty. The royal monopoly on trade was abolished. There was, however, one advantage to Siam. Siamese rice could now be exported to the British colonies. With this demand in rice, more land had to be cultivated. In 1860, work started on the digging of the Mahasawat Canal that linked the Bangkok Noi Canal to the Tha Chin River. This canal facilitated travel from Bangkok to the Prak Pathom Chedi in Nakhon Pathom. It also provided irrigation for rice cultivation in the surrounding area, which became huge rice fields and vegetable farms. Again, Chinese laborers were conscripted to dig this 27-kilometer canal. A special feature of this canal was the sala or pavilions, which were built along the banks at 4-kilometer intervals. There were 7 along the entire length of the canal. These salas served different purposes and were named accordingly. There was a sala where the earth was dumped, called Sala Din, or the Sala for Earth. When the laborers got ill or injured, they were taken to the Sala Ya, or Sala for Medicine, the first aid station. If the medicine didn't help, they were taken to another Sala down the road, Sala Tamasop, or the Sala for the Dead. There was a twin set of pavilions to accommodate the dead. In 1848, during the reign of King Rama V, another canal was dug, linking the Mahasawat to the Pasicharan Canal to the south. The king named this canal Tawi-Watana, or increased development. The area around this canal was called Tawi-Watana as well. These canals increased the land available for rice cultivation tremendously. From 1850 to 1900, the rice exports increased tenfold, from 60,000 tons to 660,000 tons. Land use for rice cultivation over the same period increased by 55%. What is Tawi-Watana like today? All the sala were removed in the course of widening the Mahasawat Canal in 1947. Severe floods in 2011-2012 wiped out most of the farms in the area. The orchid farms never recovered because of the high reinvestment costs. This is the only photo of an actual farm. The rest are just memories in the museum. Mansions and restaurants have replaced many of the farms along the Tawi-Watana Canal on the Bangkok side, but the legacy of the Sala lives on in the names of the places. Sala Tamasop is the name of the road running along the Mahasawat in Tawi-Watana, a grim reminder of the men who died digging this canal. Saladin, the Sala for earth, is the name of a farming community on the northern banks of the Mahasawat in Nakhon Pathom. The farms here practice organic farming and keep this stretch of the canal one of the cleanest in and around Bangkok. Water hyacinth is removed from the canal, crushed, treated, and used as fertilizers by the farms here. They also conduct boat tours to take visitors to all the different farms. A red melon farm, a lotus farm, orchid farm, and you can take a tractor ride through a rice field. Salaya is a university town in Nakhon Pathom that's home to the Mahidol University, the Rajamongkol University of Technology, Ratanakosin, and the Mahamakot Buddhist University. When I visited the Tawi Watana Museum many years ago, I never dreamed that one day I would make Salaya my home in Thailand. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our journey. I thank you for joining me. Can we please put off this light? It's very glaring. A bit ไฟได้ไหม ขอบคุณครับ Anybody?
Please stand and loudly.
Okay. Yeah. Eric said I could sit down. Just a comment about the what you said about the Chinese being conscripted to dig the canals. Actually, it was the Chinese who conscripted the Chinese. They were the heads of the Chinese. Like Tawi Watana was dug up by, they are a big family now. Pisalibut. This family, they were Chinese, and they were heads of the Chinese, and they obtained, because the Thais didn't know how to do these things, so it was the Chinese who got, laborers, Chinese laborers, to do much of this work. And there are several books about the Chinese, the main Chinese, the important Chinese families who did this. Yeah.
Thank you, Siri. Sometimes we are our worst enemies.
Just as Eric and I were classmates in Singapore.
Never spoke to her when we were in school. Anybody else?
Thank you. Just curious, so for some of the various spots you mentioned, it seems to be important to mention that how you were saying that they turn to tourism to find a way to adapt and keep from being squeezed out. So how do they find the balance between getting the tourism to sustain themselves but not getting swamped in the process?
You're talking about Kok San Chao, right? The island community.
Yeah. But I mean, possibly, but also can that also model be applied to the other spots you mentioned? Are they trying to promote themselves to sustain?
I think one of the conditions is the tourists must be in small groups. They're not going to welcome big bus loads of Chinese tourists. They'll be the end of the place.
Yeah.
So it's got to be in small groups, maybe 10 or less. And it's so inaccessible that you really got to love the place before you can be bothered to walk in there.
And also, is Nongchok promoting itself any?
No, it isn't.
For its culture, the unique culture in Bangkok.
No, I think I'm the only one doing it. I like the place because it's so unlike Bangkok. Their museum is one of the community museums that's a standalone. Most of the community museums are on a tight budget, so they have to share a classroom in school or a place in the temple. But this museum is a standalone building.
So how do you get there?
Pardon?
How do you get there?
It's in the handout.
Oh, okay.
The web page will give you the directions on how to get there. It's a bit difficult, but it's worth going. This museum, the grounds of this museum has got a garden called the 76 trees from the 76 provinces of Thailand. They'll have one tree representing indigenous to each province in Thailand. This was before the 77th province, Bang Na, is it? The one that's taken from in the north, Bangkok, before the 77th province was formed. So it's quite a nice garden. Anybody else?
Hello. Yes. How do you find these places, or how do these places find you? Do people suggest places to go on your website? Do you share information? And I assume that on the website we can find instructions or directions of how to go and how to go appropriately, people to contact before we visit, that sort of thing.
I have two sources of information. The first is a book that's issued by the Tourist Division of the Bangkok Metropolitan Authority. It was published in 2002. I don't know if they got subsequent issues. In this issue, they show you all the historical and cultural attractions in each of the 50 districts of Bangkok. Of course, some of the places are no longer there and some people have passed on. My second source of information is a book on the 26 community museums in Bangkok. Out of the 50 districts, only 26 districts have got community museums. It's got beautiful photographs and the write-ups are in Thai and English. So these are my two main sources of information. The rest sometimes are by chance. You know, someone tells me, or I read it in a travel section of the Bangkok Post, which is not often. Yes, madam.
Hello, Mr. Lim. I just wanted to take a moment and say I truly, thoroughly enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
It was informative, it was sincere, and you were absolutely charming. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more? Yes, Jim.
You talked about first the Portuguese, then you visited a Mon community. I would just like to bring to your attention and to the group here, there is an excellent book that I'm currently reading called The Siamese Melting Pot. And it's by a fellow by the name of Edward Van Roy. First chapter, of course, is the Portuguese and their impact as a minority in Thailand. And then the Mon, and then the Lao. And I would speculate that those canals we were talking about were mostly built by the Lao and Khmer slaves. But it's an excellent book about the impact that these different groups. I learned a great deal about the importance of the Mon, and of course how the Lao were treated on the annual visits to the Northeast to acquire labor.
Anyone else? Yes, madam.
I would like to begin by saying essentially what my predecessor said here, this lady who complimented you on your talk. I also very much appreciated how you incorporated craft in your discussion of places to visit in Thailand and how you mention the names and the histories of the people, because I think that's very important, that they're not anonymous craftspeople, but they gain a profile through your work. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I understand from your talk, and we see it in newspapers all the time, the small heritage places are under duress nowadays. And you mentioned how tourism maybe can be a source of support. Do you also, through your website, notice that that you're being effective, or is there some way of maybe marshaling more support through your website? I'm thinking that my sense is that all of these small places that are such treasures, they're very much threatened today and need help, more than maybe just mentioning that tourists can go there.
In fact, one of my readers told me, don't make it too popular. That will be the end of the place.
It's a double-edged sword.
What we can do is attract small groups of tourists. I don't expect overwhelming crowds of tourists going to the places that I write about. They are not popular to most people. They're only popular to a very small niche of people. So that way, I think we can maintain the balance that Stephen brought up. Preserve their life, maintain the community, but don't spoil it with too many people going there. I hope that answers your point.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wondered if tourism is the only support for these small treasures.
You see, they need the income. And they also need the moral support or interest that the other people show for them. If we're going to leave them alone, they're just going to die off. So sometimes when they get visitors who are genuinely interested in what they're doing, it gives them the motivation to carry on.
Thank you.
Over there.
You haven't mentioned the other element, which is very important, which is, are the younger generation in these communities picking up these skills, or are they leaving the villages and going to find jobs in the big city?
From what I can see, most of them are middle-aged and seniors. There were very few young people in the places that I went to. And an example is the Kurichin community. You know, from 57 to now, it's just shrunk from 300 families to 83 families. So sometimes it's a natural attrition. You know, the younger ones will just move out. That's very hard to stop.
I did visit the Portuguese church in the late 90s. I was very disappointed because I couldn't get into it. It was padlocked, shut, and there were bats and pigeons all over the place, and there was not a single person there.
Santa Cruz?
Yes.
Oh.
And then, maybe it was the early 90s. And then to my surprise, I didn't go there, but I saw in the Bangkok Post in about, I think, 97 or 98, it was restored.
Yes.
And they did a wonderful job on it. Who then organized the restoration? Obviously not the local community.
I think within the community, they're quite closely knit. Like the lady who owns the museum, she's not here tonight. But I think since they restored the church, they set up the museum, the community has got together to organize, publicize themselves, organize short tours, and the church is in good condition now.
So that looks like a community that has actually regenerated itself to some extent.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Do visit that museum. It's worth a visit. Yes, please.
Thank you. The soap carver, he doesn't sell his work.
Pardon?
He does not sell his artwork, and he only teaches.
He only teaches.
Yeah. Does he have a semi-formal school of students? Or
He conducts his classes in the Chatuchak weekend market.
Okay.
I think it's 5,000 odd baht. It includes a set of knives and 15 hours. And you can take it at your leisure. You can take 1 hour a week, or you can take 3 hours a week.
Is that his main source of income?
Yeah. He doesn't sell any of his works.
Thank you.
Can the Siam Society organize trips there?
Oh, it's not for me to say. I'm a
No,
guest
but
speaker.
The Siam Society would be exactly the society to do it, right?
Yes.
So can you suggest it?
I will. I would also like to see the book of 26
I'm very
museums.
interested, so...
Is the book on 26 museums in Thai only or in English?